In today's video, we continue on with our NHL season preview series. We're still working our way through the teams in the Atlantic Division. Today, we take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. We saw big changes with the team with the Mitch Marner departure. How will it affect the team? How can they continue on, and will they be as strong without the 100-point player in their lineup? We'll discuss the upcoming year for the Leafs and preview their season coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss in the upcoming season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. To me, they're going to be one of the more interesting teams to see how things go, considering the changes they went through so far in the offseason. Now, of course, if you're new to this series, essentially, we're going to quick breakdown here of how we're going to structure the video. We're going to do a quick recap of the last year, the 24-25 season, take a look at the team and individual stats. We'll take a look at their salary cap space, how the team has changed, additions and subtractions over the course of the offseason, any rookies that might impact the roster, any players that we expect to be traded, any contract extensions that we could see, what the projected lineup is going to look like, and the top questions facing the franchise going into the season, along with my thoughts on how I think they're going to do. So looking at the 24-25 season for the Maple Leafs to recap last year, they had a pretty solid regular season, the first with Craig Berube as head coach. They've finished first in the Atlantic Division. It's the first time they've won the division in that current format as well. So it's been a long time coming. They finished with a record 52-26-4 for 108 points. Obviously, didn't really have a big impact, though, on the overall result. They still ended up losing in the second round of the playoffs. So during the era here with Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Willie Nylander, during that whole time, these guys were the up-and-coming leaders of this team. They made the playoffs in the last 9 years, but they only have 2 series wins. That's the big kind of mark against them here. They've had great regular season success. They've made the playoffs quite a few times now, but they just haven't won a lot of playoff series. And both times they have won a series, more recently, they've lost to the Panthers in round 2. So obviously that's a hump that they haven't been able to get over. Now last year, a couple of quick stats here. They scored 267 goals. They allowed 229. Goals for was ranked 7th. Goals against were ranked 8th. So obviously that's a pretty solid season overall. Near the deadline, they added Scott Laughton, who came over from Philadelphia. They brought in Brandon Carlo from the Bruins as well, and certainly had a pretty solid-looking lineup going into the postseason. Their top performing individuals last year were led by Mitch Marner, of course, so we'll talk about a lot in this video, 102 points. Willie Nylander had 84. Austin Matthews had an injury-riddled season, only scored 33 goals, which, a lot of guys would love to score that much. But for Matthews, that is a major down season, and he put up 78 points in total. Tavares had 74, and Matthew Nyes had a nice breakout season, potting 29 goals and 58 points. So overall, like I said, a pretty good season. The regular season was good, lots of great performances individually. Even with the down year for Matthews and the injuries, they still finished first in the division. So really not much to be upset about. The only thing, of course, is they haven't been able to get the job done in the playoffs. And, of course, not only did they lose in the playoffs, but they unfortunately lost in a pretty epic way, losing 4-3, so a 7-game series against the Panthers. And we saw the meltdown of this team. They actually had a really good start to the series, but then they fell apart and melted down. And unfortunately, the end of the Marner era as a Leaf, we've seen him yelling at the bench with mere moments to go in Game 7, and just wasn't a good sight at all. Just complete collapse. After the offseason moves are done, which we're expecting that it's pretty much done, but we could still see a move or two here. But right now they have $1.9 million in cap space, which isn't a lot, but they could still do something with that money should they decide to do so. Now, looking at how the team has changed, like I said, pretty significant change this year. We saw on the subtraction side, especially with Mitch Marner no longer being a Maple Leaf. Now, of course, he ends up doing a sign and trade deal to go to the Vegas Golden Knights. It sounds like from what we've seen and heard that this is something he's been thinking about for a long time. He ended up at the end of the offseason doing an interview with Mark Masters of TSN, which was kind of bizarre in my opinion. Basically kind of explaining why he left, citing privacy and security concerns, that saying after the playoffs his address was being shared by fans online, that we're going to go pay him a visit to say their goodbyes. I just had a young son for his first child with his wife, and they just didn't feel safe and secure in their hometown anymore. I don't know. A lot of people, unfortunately, aren't buying that. Nobody can seem to find the online history of this being shared. Normally, things can't really get always wiped clean of the internet. There's always something, a trail somewhere that you can find it. Nobody who's anybody prominent that covers the team, follows the team, or anybody that we've heard of has even ever seen any of the social media posts that was being referenced in that interview. So I'm not calling him a liar. Just most people that I've seen in the Leaf Nation didn't completely seem to buy it. So yeah, it's to me, it's just unfortunate how his time in Toronto has come to a close. But at the end of the day, it's a big significant change for the team that he's no longer there. Now, they also moved on from Ryan Reeves. Of course, he had asked to be moved, citing the fact that things really weren't working out and he wasn't getting a big opportunity. They also moved on from Pontus Holmberg, Matt Murray, and Max Pacioretty remains unsigned. He's not a Leaf, but he's not a member of any other team. There is some talk and speculation that he could still either go to Leafs camp on a PTO, or could be a last-minute signing, but we don't know for sure if the door's closed. On Pacioretty, we can't say for certain, but it sounds like he's not coming back. But like I said, he's not anywhere else yet, so we don't know. New additions to the team, of course, Nikolai Waugh come over from Vegas and the sign and trade with Vegas and the Marner deal. They also made a trade with the Canucks for Dakota Joshua. Another trade with Utah, picking up Matias Pincelli, who they're hoping can be a good project, if you will. It could be a good playmaking winger, but obviously somebody who needed a fresh start down season, and hopefully that can be a case for him to go to Toronto and kind of rejuvenate himself. Michael Pezzetta comes over from Montreal as a UFA. And they also brought in Henry Thrun, who comes over from San Jose. Travis Boyd and Vinny Lettieri also signed as free agent deals. As far as rookies that we could see impact the roster this year, the main one is Easton Cowan. I'm not really sure where Cowan will play this year. I don't think he makes the roster at a training camp, but you never know. If he has a really good camp, makes things interesting, maybe he gets a little bit of a look in the beginning to see if he gets a chance, but I would think the best thing for him to be continue developing and maybe more of a full-time role possibly next year. As far as trade bait goes, some names to look for throughout training camp and into the early part of the season. If they're not moved, but David Kampf and Kelly Yarncroke are names that the Leafs have been trying to move for an extended period of time. There's also a lot of speculation about Nick Robertson and where he fits in the lineup as well, and that he could be a player to watch even though he signed a new contract. So we'll see. As far as contract extensions that we might see during the season, the main one would be Scott Lawton. Of course, came over last year at the deadline from the Flyers. Has been a pretty decent fit. So I think they'll likely try to extend him. A few other players include guys already with the team from before. Anthony Stolarz, who's on a 2-year deal. They began negotiations on an extension with him. And Bobby McMahon would be eligible as well. I kind of wonder if they'll take more of the wait-and-see approach, and if he's having a good season, try to extend him during the season. But those two guys are eligible. Matias Pincelli also is eligible, but I would suspect they'll want to see Pincelli play for a bit and where he fits and kind of how he's gelling with the team here before extending his contract. Because clearly, they have the time, you might as well take it. So looking at their projected lineup going into the season, in between the pipes will be the same as last year. Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll, pretty good tandem. Both guys have pretty decent seasons. Both guys, again, have an injury history, so it's nice that they can cover for each other when they're out. The last thing you want to see is them getting hurt at the same time, of course, but They do have some pretty solid goaltending overall. They're in pretty good shape that way. On the D-Corps, we've got your likely top four going to be McCabe and Tanev and Riley and Carlo, with your third pair likely being Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Simon Benoit. You'll have guys like Henry Thrun and Philippe Myers battling for the number 7-8 spot on the roster. But your top six D-men are pretty set, I think, for the most part, by the Leafs there. Now, on the forward group, we're expecting the top line to likely be Matthews with Matthew Nyes and probably Michelli. Michelli is a good playmaking winger. He put up over 50 points before with Arizona, so they're kind of hoping that he will bounce back after a down year last year, the first year in Utah, and that he can, be a similar type of player that Marner was with Matthews. Now, he's not on Marner's level. Even if he matches his career high, he'll be about half the production of Marner. But he racked up a lot of assists, was a great passer and setup man during a couple of years ago when they were still the Coyotes. So they're hoping Michelli can kind of fit in there and help produce some of the offense lost by Marner's absence. Now, the second line likely going to be Tavares and Nylander with another, potential movement there, but likely going to be Domi. I would suspect will get the opportunity to start the year. So Michelli and Domi, to me, are guys who could be moved around. They could even end up swapping those two guys. You could see Domi with Matthews and Nyes, and then Michelli with Nylander and Tavares as well. Either way, those are going to probably be your players getting the top six opportunities, I would suspect, for the time being. Your third line likely going to be Nikolai Waugh, Dakota Joshua, and Bobby McMahon. And then your fourth line will likely be Scott Lawton, Steven Lorentz, and for right now, Yarncroke or Robertson. They would want to move Yarncroke in camp if they do. But is Robertson really going to be a fourth liner is the question, right? He's not really that type of role player. So, is there a chance he gets a top six opportunity if Michelli or Domi's not working out? I still wonder where he fits long term and if there's a great spot for him. So, some question marks for sure on the wings for the Maple Leafs. Now, as I mentioned, the top questions facing this team, the biggest one for me by far is how can they replace the production from Mitch Marner, and will Austin Matthews be affected? Because obviously he played with Mitch the most. They've been on a line together a lot in their early parts of their careers. And Marner's, I'm not saying that Matthews wouldn't have been successful without him, but he was a big part of it. He was a big part of a lot of the Matthews goals. So, without having that familiar face and the playmaking ability of him, will Matthews be impacted? And how do they replace the production? Well, right now they're going to have to replace the production by committee. You'd have to hope that Michelli, Joshua, and Nick Waugh might come together to make up similar production. But you're taking three guys to make up the offense for one. So it's not an easy task at all. So again, like I said, the top six is going to be completely different. Not having that, high-level creative playmaking guy there should make a difference, but just how much is the question that it's going to be. It's really difficult to kind of pinpoint right now. There's been lots of speculation they could trade a defenseman for a forward to kind of get a more solidified top six guy. Somebody obviously making a lot less than what Marner would have made. That contract played a big role as to why they didn't push to keep him as well. But, there's been some rumblings about either a Benoit or a Carlo being moved, maybe even packaged for, a forward, preferably a scoring winger who could, or playmaking winger to play in the top six if they can find that. So, not the easiest deal to make, but there's lots of talk of maybe trading a more defensive style defenseman for some help to make sure they have enough scoring, because that could be a problem for them later on. Another big question, of course, is can Austin Matthews bounce back? Can he stay healthy? Can he be anywhere near that 60 goal man that he was a couple seasons back? Can he get back to being a guy that's in the contention and conversation for the Hart Trophy? Can he put up 100 points? Can he put up 50 goals? Or, what's his health status and production level going to be, especially in the post-Marner era here. So curious to see really how Matthews plays this year. Whether or not he bounces back or produces at a higher level than last year will be a big factor. I mean, Nylander, I think, had a pretty good season at 84 points. I wouldn't be shocked. I think he's capable of doing 100 points as well. They may be able to get more out of Nylander, more out of Matthews, which could play a role. And you would think that one of the main players who could still improve might be Nyes. I mean, he had a big improvement last year, so I don't know if we'll see that big of a jump again, but it's possible that he could still continue to build on that, improve on that, and we'll see. Now, like I said, the first place finish in the Atlantic Division didn't help them long-term in the playoffs. They still lost second round in a 7-game series to the Florida Panthers, which, again, is going to cause some issues here. Like I said, that was a big role in Marner's departure, but, where are they going to finish this year? I do think with Marner's absence that it's reasonable to think that they could take a step back. How much of one is kind of hard to say. The teams like the Lightning and the Panthers are, they're still going to be quite good. You got Ottawa and Montreal coming up that were wildcard teams last year. We're not too far behind. So it's kind of interesting to see how things could go. I do expect the Leafs to once again be a playoff team. But I wouldn't be shocking, instead of rather being a first-place team, if they fall down maybe closer to that third, or maybe it could even be a scenario where the third place in the Atlantic or the wild card 1 spot, it might be really tight between the two. It might come down to the wire. Kind of hard to say, but I do expect them to still be a good team, a playoff team, but maybe a little bit less potent offensive team that they were in the last number of years. It's going to be interesting to see, really, like I said, how they kind of change their identity a little bit and how they continue to have the success without Marner. It's just going to be such a big adjustment period for the team. So I do have some concerns. And if they trade a defenseman for a forward, which also isn't a horrible idea, that decor gets weakened a little bit as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. I do think, like I said, that the Leafs will be a playoff team, probably still a top 3 team, but I do wonder if it's possible they slip a little bit lower. Hard to say. Same thing with the Panthers being without Matthew Tkachuk for the first 3 or 4 months of the season. Like, we could see the Atlantic might be more wide open than we might have thought. So we'll have to wait and see how everything plays out. But let me know your thoughts and expectations for this 25-26 version of the Toronto Maple Leafs down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.